going to talk about the timeline panel and how you can actually edit videos inside of this program. Now, a lot of people like to say, oh, that was Photoshop talking about videos, and it's very seldom the truth. But you can Photoshop videos inside of this program. So today I've given you a zip file, and remember, anytime I give you a zip file, you're going to need to control or right click on it. On a Mac, you just double click on it, that'll open the folder. On PC, right click, go to extract all, save it in the same location so you can find the files we're going to work with today. Now the two files that we're going to work with, one of them is a PSD file. You can double click on that, that'll open it immediately. Now the other file that we have in here is an actual video file. Now to get this into your program is fairly simple. You just click, hold, and drag it onto Photoshop. It'll say copy. When you release here, it's going to place that video into the location. It will be a little cropped, so you might have to make it just a hair bigger than it was, and then hit return on your keyboard. Now, if you look at your layers very carefully, you're going to notice that you have two separate layers here. One is the time-lapse layer, and that layer is the video. The other one is the image of the girl. So rename that image to model so you know what that is. I'm going to turn off my time lapse and I'm just going to focus on the model to start with. We'll come back to the actual editing of the video in a moment. Before we do that, we need to set up the girl correctly. So what we're going to do today is a version of a double exposure. The double exposure, the actual video is going to play in parts of her, but we have to set her image up correctly first. So let's grab the actual model. Grab your quick selection tool and hit select subject. That'll make a pretty good selection of her, but there are going to be some spots that it likes to fight, particularly up in the hair and on the top of her nose and forehead. If it didn't grab those right, make sure to come back in with your quick selection tool to clean that up. Now if it did grab her right, good. I want you to create a layer mask on that so that we cut her out of her background. Now before we begin, we want something in the background. We want to have something back there. So we're going to create a basic gradient. So hit your half black, half white circle, your adjustment layer, and go to gradient here. Now the gradient I want to pick is the very basic black to white gradient. But I don't want to leave it like it is. I'm going to hit OK on this. I'm going to change it to a radial gradient so that it's white in the middle, black on the outside. And then I'm going to push up that scale. Now if it's black in the middle for you, you can always hit reverse right here to kind of alter how that looks. And I'm going to push that scale way up. I barely want to see a gradient. I'm at like 600%. Hit OK when you've got that and move that to the bottom so that it's behind her. Now with the model selected, we're going to create this double exposure using this video. Now to do this correctly, we have to do a couple of things. First, I want to change her so that she's black and white. I'm going to hit the adjustment layers again. I'm going to go to hue and saturation, and I'm going to drag the saturation down to none on this. I'll make sure to link that down so that it's on her only. Now in your layers panel, we can duplicate layers just like we duplicate layers on the actual document. If I were to grab her image here, hold Option, click and drag, I can duplicate her image. But just like I can do that in my layers on my document, I can do it in my layers panel too on specific things. So right here we have this option that is the layer mask on the girl. I'm going to hold Alt or Option on this and I'm going to drag it up to the timeline. That puts that same layer mask on the timeline as is on the girl. Now when I bring that forward, I can see the actual image of that video and it's masked into the girl. So once we have that established, we can utilize that layer mask to paint black or white to make things visible or invisible. So black is invisible. I want to get rid of parts of this video. I'm going to come back over top of the front half of her face because I want to be able to see her face. I'm going to go down into her neck so I can see her hoodie a little bit. I'm also going to get the edge of the hair. Next, I'm going to go inside of this area of her. And to do that, I want to drop my opacity down a little bit so that I have to click a few times. Go to like 30%, somewhere in there. Make your brush a little bit smaller and just kind of drag into some of these areas a couple of times so you can see a little bit of the hair coming through. I want to see a little bit of the areas that are not necessarily video. This will give it a nice little textured feel. And the more I click, the more I'll see whatever I'm clicking on. So go through and see if you can kind of make a nice smoother look to this. Once done, change your opacity back to 100% on your brush. Otherwise, it'll stay that way for future use. So that puts the video in the actual image of the girl. But I want a second version of the image. I want this image running in 2 locations. So I'm going to duplicate this entire layer. So I'm going to click on the time-lapse image, and then I'm going to hold Option, click and drag this underneath the model. This is going to give me a second version of the video. You won't notice anything happen because it still has that layer mask on it. To turn that layer mask off, hold Shift on your keyboard and click right on that layer mask. That'll turn it off. Next, I want to drop the opacity down on this so that I can't see it as clearly. I want to be able to see that background gradient. Now here's where we get to experiment a little bit. Because the background gradient fill is black to white, I'm not seeing a lot of real definition in this video. If I were to double click back on this gradient fill, I can edit this fill. So I want to change my gradient. Instead of black to white, I want to pick any other color than black. I'm going to leave white the same. But I'm going to change the color of the black to something different. And that'll help pop some of that color through onto that video that we've got. Now we have everything in place, but the video is not running. We have what's called a smart object on that video. So when we made that video, it turned it into a smart object. That means the entire video is hidden in a separate file. To access that, we need to access our timeline panel. So let's go up to the top, Window, and let's go to Timeline. And that's going to pop this little panel down towards the bottom. The Timeline panel is kind of an introduction into video editing in general. So we're going to see some different layers here that are representing our video. This can be a little confusing at a quick glance, so keep that in mind. When I hit Create Video Timeline right here, it's going to turn that smart object into a running video. You're going to see these different layers show up, and we're going to utilize these layers in different ways. But just to make sure it's working, hit the play button. You should see that video running inside the girl and on the outside area. So this gives me the look that I want. It's doing what I'm asking it to do. So I'm going to make this panel bigger, but understand changes are happening up here too. Now, if I move my playhead, which is this little red line with a blue arrow at the top, too far, it shows me that the video is running even after the model and the gradient stop. So I want to make sure that all my videos are the same length. I'm just going to grab right at the end of each one of these, bringing them all down to that 5-second mark. So that's going to make sure that it never runs out of footage. Okay. I can make this bigger or smaller by grabbing this little bar and pulling it out, or this little mountain down at the bottom. I can make this bigger or smaller so I can see everything. On the left-hand side, we have our different layers. These layers in your timeline panel are direct reflections of the layers that you have in the layers panel. So if you make a new layer over here, it'll make a new layer here as well. So we can see how these different layers are moving and how they're being manipulated along the way. If I open any one of these, I'll see that I have options to animate these things. So I can change the size on them. I can make them more opaque, or I can stylize them. I can move the layer mask. There are options galore for what you can do with this. So let's look at the very basics of this. Place your playhead at the beginning of your video, right at the start. And I want you to go up here and I want you to type your first name and first name only. So type in your first name, pick a font that you like, something that's different, something unique to you. Make it bigger, bolder, and I want it to be right where she's staring. Okay? Change the color if you would like. So I'm going to alter my color and I'm going to kind of match this pinky purple look that I'm going with. So that's going to be my first name. Notice when I made that text in my timeline, I now have a new layer named that, right? So I can open this up so I can see the different options here. Now, what we're about to do is called keyframing. Keyframing is where I mark one specific point in time and say this is going to be in this location at this time. So when I click on the transform option right here, it's going to make this little keyframe for me. And this keyframe says that the name David is right here at this point in time. So let me drag this up, way up off my document. So once you've created your name and you've dragged it up to the top, let's move our playhead down to about the 2-second mark. And at the 2-second mark, I want this name to move. I want it to go from up here at the top to right here in the middle of this document where she's looking. So if it's not grabbing, so if you click on that and it doesn't want to move, it's like creating a lasso. Check your layers, make sure you're on your name. And then with your move tool, uncheck the option that says auto select. Turn that off. And that'll allow you to move your name out of that blank space into location. So what did we actually do there? If I were to move my playhead now, I can see my name moving. So at the start, I said that this keyframe has my name at the top. This keyframe over here has my name in her eyesight. Everywhere between there, it's moving from point A to point B. It's animating. So when I hit play, my name moves down into location. How fast or how slow it moves is dependent on, one, if the timeline is buffered. You can see mine is buffering currently. And how close your keyframes are. So the closer your keyframes are, the faster it's going to move. So right now, mine moves like this. But if I were to move that keyframe much closer and run that again, it'll have to buffer again, so be patient with it. But it'll move dramatically faster along the way. So once it's buffered, you can see it moves into location. So I put my second keyframe at about the 1-second mark. All right. Now let's put our playhead back at the beginning. And this time, I want you to grab your type tool, and I want you to type your last name. Use a different font, use a different color. Try to pick a font that's very different from the previous one, something that's like wildly different if you can help it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find a different looking font. Now with this one, I want to do the same thing, but I want it to be coming from the right hand side. So I'm going to open up my last name. Right here at the beginning, I'm going to click this little stopwatch toggle animation for transform. And I'm going to move my name off to the right. I'm going to go to the 1-second mark where the first name stops. And right here, I'm going to click on that name and I'm going to drag it back into location underneath my first name. Now between these 2 points, it's going to move. So again, it's got to buffer a little bit. Be patient with it. So once it's buffered out, you should be able to click on this and have this name move into location. Pretty cool, right? So now I want to do the opposite. I want to create a keyframe at the 4-second mark. Now I can't hit that stopwatch again. If I hit that stopwatch again, I end up in trouble. I have to hit this little keyframe button right here, and that's going to create a keyframe for me. So once it's created that keyframe, it's saying at this point in time, it's in this location. When I move further down to the end of this document, I can move this off to the right, and then that will move that name off to the right again. Do the same thing with your first name. So open it up at the 4-second mark, create a new keyframe hitting this little diamond shape. And then at the final second, we want to grab that name and drag it back up out of the way. So that'll give me a nice little setup where that name moves up and out at the end. Pretty cool, right? So let's see if we can do this in any other locations or if we can alter any of our other locations along the way. One quick, easy way to do this is by altering your transitions. So right here in your timeline panel, there's this half black, half white square. I want you to click on that. And you'll see it has fade with black, fade with white, fade with color, crossfade, and fade. It also has a duration of how long this will take place. So if I take the fade right here and put it at the end of my name on both of them, what will happen is not only will my name move off, but it'll also fade out slowly. Pretty cool. So there's a lot of different options that you can play around with in your timeline. So let me be 100% transparent here. If you are editing videos, don't do it in Photoshop. There are other programs that make this a lot easier for you. However, if you're making little GIFs or like very small videos, you can get away with it in Photoshop. It will crash your computer if you're doing a bunch of crazy stuff. So do be careful with it that you're not going too crazy with it or working on too complicated a document. All right, so the timeline is made. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and buffer this real quick, just letting it play. It's going to take a minute to kind of play out. And as this buffers out, we want to talk about how we can export this out so we can utilize this. Now there are a few different file types that you can create today. You can create a MP4, which is the most common video type and one that I would recommend using. Or you can create a GIF file, a GIF file, however you say it. And that will kind of create a flat image that will kind of continue to move. So up at the top, I want you to hit File, and I want you to go down towards Export. Now when you go to export, there are options at the very bottom that says render video. Now when you click on this, it's going to pop up this interface. It's going to ask you what type, where you want to save it. It looks very different from your other save options, so keep that in mind. The first thing you need to do is select a folder. So click on this option, and I would recommend saving to your desktop or somewhere where you can easily find it. Select that folder. So wherever this is where it's going to save. So be very careful here. The format that you pick, I'm going to choose H.264. That is an MP4 option. I'm going to have that checked. Now quality is up to you, however you want to do it. You can keep it the typical document size if you would like. All of the rest of this keeps fairly simple. You could start in the middle of the document and kind of export just the back half if you wanted to. Whatever floats your boat. I'm going to leave all the rest of this the same. Just make sure that folder's in the right place and that you've named it correctly. Hit render, and that's going to take a moment to render out that document. It will export it and it will save it to your computer. Okay, so rendering videos can be a little heavy on the computer, just fair warning. So this time we're going to save it as a GIF file. So to do this, go up to File, go to Export, go to Export As. Now this will open up a different interface in which you can find the formats in the top right, changing this to a GIF file. Make sure everything over here is the same. It should be default all the way through. Everything should stay the same. You could scale it down or up to make it a little bigger or smaller if need be. Hit export on this and then make sure again you are saving into the right location. So I'm going to save this to downloads and I'm going to hit save in this location. You should save to desktop or somewhere where you know where it's going to be. Now once you've done that, you now have an MP4, you now have a GIF that will play this. As an experiment, try doing this with your face instead of this girl's face. Make this actually customizable to you. To do that very simply, go to your layers panel, take this image out and put your image in the exact same location. Layer mask yourself and then add that layer mask up here to time lapse. You can just pull that girl out and put yourself in that location. Exporting again as a GIF and an MP4, you have something you can play with on socials. So let's talk about what we actually talked about today. We looked at layer masking, we looked at adjustment layers, we looked at how to do a double exposure, we looked at our timeline panel and how we can move and manipulate our videos in that timeline. We also looked at how to animate that using keyframes along the way. So that's your daily dose of design. If you found this helpful, please like or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. See you in the next one.